right. Hello, everyone. Hello, hello, hello. I'd like to welcome you to an interview with Ron Miscavige. Ron, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you very much, Jeff. I'm glad you asked me to come on.
Absolutely. So Ron's book is Ruthless. Well, my color settings, you can see it better actually over on his. Ruthless, Scientology, my son David Miscavige, and me. Ron here is the father of the current leader of Scientology. What's the what's the acronym that they use for him?
COB, which is
COB.
short for chairman of the board.
That's right. And you were in for 41 years, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, actually 42.
42? Gotcha.
Close.
And your book has been an incredible, eye-opening experience, above and beyond, some of the documentaries that have been out there, and the current show being run by Leah Remini.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wonderful stuff, and this is a very intimate, very brutally honest book, and it's honestly incredible. I loved it. So for today, we're gonna go for about an hour, maybe a little bit longer. If anybody does want to super chat or Streamlabs, they can try and ask a question. Not sure if we'll be able to get to all of them, but we'll try after we talk for a little bit. And
Okay.
fair warning, me and Ron both we swear like sailors.
Well, I swear like a Marine, but you can swear like a sailor.
Absolutely,
There you
absolutely.
go.
So I suppose we should just start at the beginning. This is back in the 70s when you first found the Church of Scientology.
Yes, that's right. That's when I got interested in it and actually got my family in the summer of 1970.
Mhm. And the initial draw to it was more complicated than just this is an interesting belief system. It's more than just this is a new way to think about life and think about yourself and communicate with people. It was more than that really brought you into the church, wasn't it?
Absolutely. And if you want, I can just go right to the very beginning of that.
Yes, please, by all means.
Okay, well, here's how it started. I have, and I still have, a good friend named Nelson Sandy. He's a fellow musician. And by the way, I play trumpet and flugelhorn, and I still do gigs quite often. But Nelson and I used to do gigs together, and we were also salesmen for this one company because I had 4 kids, and you that comes first in my book. You take care of your family. I was not going to go on the road with some band and let them shift for themselves or maybe not enjoy a fairly uh, fruitful life where you have a father home and everything. But anyway, Nelson Sandy said to me one day, Ron, how would you like to make an extra $100,000 this year? This is in like 1969. And I said, hey, are you kidding me? Oh, and by the way, I just want to tell you this as an aside. Nelson Sandy is the one who said to me, I used to be a doctor, but I lost my patience. He had a great sense of humor. And one time we're playing a gig, Jeff, and we got off the bandstand, and a guy come over and said, Nelson, you're a great singer. Can I buy you a drink? He said, no, but can I have the money?
Ooh.
He was really quick on the uptake. So for him to say this to me, and he just kind of rolled it off his tongue, how would you like to make an extra $100,000? I said, wow, of course I would. What the hell are you talking about?
Especially in
So
the
he took me to
70s, that's
this.
a lot of
Oh, yeah.
money.
He took me, in the late 60s, what would he be worth, about $500,000 now?
Oh yeah.
I don't know.
No, probably. I mean, I that's easily.
Yeah.
That's an incredible amount of money back then.
Okay. So he took me to what's called an opportunity meeting.
Mm.
And this was an opportunity to get involved in a multi marketing scheme. And it was called Holiday Magic. As all of these schemes go, the people at the top who start it make all the money, and everybody else is a bottom feeder.
Mhm.
So I went to this meeting with him, and I'm standing there talking to somebody, and this guy who's talking to somebody to my left, he says, I'm a Scientologist. And I said, hang on, to the person I was talking to. I says, what is that? Well, I pinned down this guy for about 30 minutes, and I've just kind of forced him to tell me about Scientology. For whatever reason, it rang a bell.
Mm.
Anyway, it piqued my interest, and I did get involved in Holiday Magic, but that then piqued my interest to check it out further. And there was a guy in southern Jersey by the name of Frank Ogle, and he had a cafeteria. And every Tuesday or Wednesday, he would have a meeting with all local people and they would talk about Scientology. He would take up one particular thing and then demonstrate it to us, and then we do drills on it. And I became very interested, and I went to it for about 4 weeks, and my interest waned, so I just let it go. Now,
This is basically a pyramid scheme, though, wasn't it? The original like holiday magic thing was like a crazy pyramid
not
scheme.
basically, it was a pyramid scheme.
Oh
I mean,
god.
it's simple as that. I mean, you know, I quit when we had a little opportunity meeting, and we used to invite people to it and show them a movie. And this guy came out, and he looked like Howdy Doody, and I knew if we sold it to him, we were just scamming him. And the guy left, and I says, Nelson, I can't do this anymore. This guy, we're just taking his money. We're just goddamn bank robbers. But anyway, that's a different story. But that's how I got out of it. But anyway, getting back to Frank Ogle and going to these meetings, I then ceased going. Now, let's go back a little further. When David Miscavige, my son, was born, he was stricken with asthma. And I will tell you something. If you want to see a horrible sight, it's just a little baby or a little kid having an asthmatic attack, struggling for his life, and you don't know whether he can take the next breath. It used to break my heart. And I was the one who actually looked after him. Not that my first wife didn't, but I took special care, and I used to take him to the doctor and get him shots for his asthma. He'd give him shots of adrenaline. And I knew this absolutely was not good for a little kid to get these shots. So I was always looking for something to help handle him, and so he can lead at least a physical life like his brother. And even in spite of that, David played Little League football and baseball. I'll tell you what I had to do, Jeff. He was so underweight, I had to put 2.5 pound plates in his pockets, in his short pockets, so he could make the minimum weight on the football team.
Right.
Yet in a game, he played free safety, and he used to take down guys 20 pounds senior to him, just like that. He was a tough little kid, bright, just a joy to be around. We had a terrific time together.
Absolutely.
But this was killing him. And so I thought, you know what? I've heard about Scientology doing what they call auditing, which is counseling. And I called up Frank Ogle, and I haven't been in touch with him for a while. I said, hey, Frank, would you mind taking in my son and see if you can help him out with some auditing, and which is the same as counseling, but it's very specifically designed to what you want to handle. So he said, no problem. So I took him down. He took David in session. 45 minutes later, he came out smiling, cheerful. I said, Dave, how's it going? He says, Dad, I'm handled. And he never had another severe asthmatic attack as a young man.
Wow. That's incredible.
That was an epiphany for me. Am I using the right word?
Oh yeah. That's
life?
definitely an epiphany.
Okay. And I thought, wait a minute. I got to check this out. Long and short of it is I got my whole family involved. All 4 kids, my first wife. We used to drive down on Saturdays, and the kids would do courses. We would do auditing. And that's how I got started. And that's how I got in, and my other children also. And right now, because of my leaving the church, my 2 daughters, their children, and their children's children, which is my great-grandchildren, are all disconnected from me. I lost my family.
Oh, I know. We will definitely be tackling the disconnection here in just a moment. So I deal with a lot of cult-like behavior, a lot of in-group, out-group kind of mentalities. And there's a definite pattern that I've noticed over the years, and that's these groups, these very isolated and insular groups, they have very similar things across all of them. There's the feeling of us versus them, which obviously Scientology exemplifies. I mean, you can even see it with them in their almost anti-government stance at times. The whole deal with the IRS.
They infiltrated the government, the Guardian's office, which was like the Stasi of the East Germans. They infiltrated them. And of course, they got caught, and I think 11 of them went to prison for a while.
Yeah.
But that's another story. But no, their policy is never defend, attack. By the way, just let me do a little commercial here.
Sure.
If anybody wants to hear any of the interviews I do with other people, or I do podcasts where I have Ask Me Anything, I have a website. It's called therealronmiscavige.com. And I say that, and I'll say it again, therealronmiscavige.com. I'll tell you why I say it so carefully. If you put in anything other than that, it will take you to a hate site that Scientology has put up for me. And Jeff, I'm going to tell you how bad it is. They bought 500 variations of my name.
I didn't know it was that many. 500?
Oh, it's more than Leah Remini, Mike Rinder, Jason Begay, anybody who's left the church combined. It's more than all of them combined. So that any way you put in any variation other than therealronmiscavige.com, it'll take you to their hate site. And if you look at the hate site and you believe anything they say, I should have been shot a week ago. That's how bad it is.
I've been through a couple of them. Yeah, they're pretty bad. They're pretty bad. It's honestly really wild how vicious they can get, and they can take anything. The videos on them are absolutely bizarre. And I assume that you knew quite a few of these people.
Oh, I absolutely did. And I mean, I worked with one guy for over 20 years, and he comes on screen and says, well, Ron was an embarrassment. It's bullshit. This guy is Peter Schless, a wonderful composer, a great musician. We worked together for over 20 years. But listen, he's like a North Korean prisoner. You don't see off camera, the guns are pointed at him. And I don't mean literally guns in the case of Scientology. But if you fuck this up or you say the wrong thing, you're in what they call deep shit, okay?
Or
you're
the hole.
Or the hole.
Yeah, well, I want to discuss that too.
Peter was in the hole. We'll get into that later. But let me just backtrack a second. Did I cover how we got in Scientology? Did I answer that question?
Absolutely.
I just want to make sure we're covering these things.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. So another one, and this ties into it too. Another one of the tendencies for cults is a feeling of belonging, and even like love bombing is a term that some people use to describe cult-like behavior, where this sense of belonging is so intense that it lends to the otherizing of people, or in what Scientology calls suppressive people. Am I getting that right?
Well, anybody who leaves or says anything bad about Scientology or goes to the press is termed a suppressive person.
Right.
And if you're being considered to be a suppressive person, they can do anything to you. They feel that, and these are policies that you can go on the internet and look them up. Or there's a policy on what's called fair game. You may have heard about that. Fair game is if a person is declared an enemy, you can actually, per this policy, you could destroy that person and there'd be no repercussions to you from the church. Now, they said that they canceled this policy. No, they never did. They canceled talking about it because it was bad PR, but they still do it.
Of course they do. I mean, even beyond that, isn't there was something I just recently learned about it, just today, that somebody basically awarded Tom Cruise the ability to kill people?
No, I never heard that. And
somebody was just talking about it on one of the A&E shows, that he had attained something, some right or some ability that if he wished to, he could eliminate a suppressive person physically.
Okay. Now he may have been talking about Kakan.
That's what it was. What is that?
It's an old term from the Far East, and if you were declared a Kakan, you could escape the death penalty 10 times. Now, that doesn't mean you didn't necessarily have to kill somebody to escape it, but yeah, if you were a Kakan, yeah, you could kill somebody and they couldn't put you to death. You could use up one of your. It's like a cat has 9 lives. So if you had 10, that would take one marker away. He only has 9 left.
Oh my God,
Jeff, come on. We're talking sense against a world that exists in their mind and makes sense to them.
Sure.
It is really weird. But I'm going to tell you something. Look, I was a member of the church for 42 years. I was on staff for 26 and a half years. You get in a state of mind where you actually think that you're helping all of mankind by contributing to the dissemination of this knowledge. I'll tell you, there's a point of danger in this because, look, I'm not saying that this is the way with the church, but look at the Nazis. They had the Hitler's Youth.
Mm-hmm.
These little kids would turn in their parents for talking about the Nazis, and the Gestapo would come and take them away.
Yep.
That's carrying it to an extreme. But
And children who are born into SeaOrg, many times are, from what I understand, they're raised apart from their parents,
that's exactly right.
and
That's
that's
exactly right.
wild.
And they're raised by a nanny or whatever you want to call them, and they're indoctrinated into the beliefs of Scientology. And every day they go on study for 2.5 hours a day, just like if you were a Scientologist, you're expected to go on study every day for 2.5 hours.
Mm.
That's 2.5 hours of indoctrination. So
So
this is done on a constant basis.
so the I think one of the most important things that I personally would want to convey, and I think you're probably sharing this as well. Scientology has obviously a very bad reputation, and it's not undeserved at all. But Scientologists, by and large, especially individual Scientologists, they're not evil. In fact, I'd say their primary motivation is altruism. These are people who feel like they are helping the world,
Oh,
to the
that's
point.
absolutely true.
What's that?
That's absolutely true, Jeff. What you
Hmm.
said is absolutely true.
Like they're not evil. It's so easy for people to look at Scientology and see something weird and see the misdeeds and the horrible things that have been done in its name, and then they just want to lump everybody in with it, and that's not fair, not fair
No,
whatsoever.
listen, let me tell you something. The only thing I miss about Scientology, and I do miss it, is some of the friendships I had with people there, that we had a bonding experience. Look, you're working with somebody for over 20 years. I was on staff for 26 and a half years, working in the same place in the music department. You build up friendships with people that are just lasting.
Mm.
But just like life itself, and if you ever heard of a book, The Sociopath Next Door, did you ever hear of that?
Mm-mm.
By Martha Stout. It's a very easy to read book. It's a quick read, and I would invite people to read it just to proof themselves up against this type of person, which is a sociopath. And she claims that there's probably 3 or 4% of society that are sociopaths.
Mm.
And these people, the one, I don't want to get into it because I'm not touting her book just to sell it, but I
Sure.
can tell you it's valuable information. The one thing about these people who are sociopaths is that they don't have a conscience. So you don't have anything that would curb you from doing something that would be despicable in the eyes of a decent person. Now, we had 3 or 4% of those in the Sea organization. And some of these people, if I never saw them again as long as I lived, it would be too soon. Okay? Let's put it that way.
All right, that's
I mean,
fair.
these were first class pricks, and they used their position to lord it over you and make your life miserable.
Hmm.
And there was nothing you could do about it because they were a senior rank. And short of taking, life into your own hands and going and having a fist fight with them and getting some personal satisfaction, and at the end of it, you'd be in such trouble, you'd
Right.
regret ever having done it. In other words, the price of doing something like that was so high that it curbed people from attacking them personally. Yet some
Absolutely.
of them, I'll be honest with you, they deserve to be attacked personally because they would make your life so miserable, and they enjoyed it. These were the sociopaths. But most of the people, I got to tell you, most of the people who go in Scientology go in for very altruistic reasons. They once they get a taste of the technology, and I will say this: the beginning courses and auditing or counseling that you get is actually pretty valuable, especially what's called the communications course.
Okay, what's
That's
that?
something you do. I'm sorry.
Oh no, please, by all means, yeah.
And what it does is you learn the exact anatomy of a proper communication cycle. And you learn this and you drill it and you go out in life. And if you apply it, you are absolutely more causative at handling your life because that's basically the common denominator that everybody communicates. And if you become better at it, you become better at handling life.
It's like
You get
a
this, and you get certainty that this works. And then you get some other courses that are simple things and they work. Now, what this does to you, it gives you confidence in thinking, well, this is it. This is everything is going to be good later on down the line. Maybe there's some fact, quote unquote, or datum given to you that doesn't make sense to you. And you say, well, everything so far has been true. I'll just accept it.
okay.
At that point, you're hooked. At that point, you're hooked. And then you start thinking, now I've gotten this benefit from it. I got to get everybody I know to become a Scientologist. And so they would improve their lives.
So the third one about cults that I feel like it shares, and it lends towards that, and it also lends towards the beginning. Your jumping into Scientology after David's asthma is the sense of absolute answers. A lot of cults, a lot of
Yep.
religions, a lot of technologies or spiritualities. It's all about absolute answers, and I can think of no more poignant an experience than your own suffering child seemingly being cured by this belief system. And then you have people coming in and they're getting auditing and they're feeling like they have these absolute answers. And if you are trained in interpersonal communication, you're able to see in real time, just through everyday talking to people, that this is something that's real, that it's working. And it makes sense that people get sucked into it.
Yeah, Jeff, you said a mouthful and everything you said is true. That's how it works.
So I understand why people find so much value into it. Now, the thing though that I find so compelling and interesting is there's definitely a difference between I guess I'm not sure if I'm getting the first term right. Would you call a regular Scientologist a parishioner, and then people who are in the SeaOrg are how would you label
Okay.
them? Like the difference
Okay.
between the two.
Let me do it by comparing it to life itself. Yeah,
Sure.
that's a good way to describe something. A person who goes into Scientology and wants to buy services would be comparable to somebody who joined the Catholic Church. They go
Okay.
to church on Sunday, they receive communion, they have marriages at the church, they participate in various celebrations that the church has. That's what they call a
Mhm.
public Scientologist. A public Scientologist would go in, maybe he'd start with the communication course, and then he'd do some auditing or counseling, it's the same word, called life repair. And this helps you to get over some of the uh, travail that you may have suffered in life so you can let it go and walk away from it and not feel that bad about these things. In other words, that would be a public Scientologist public Scientologist where you go in and you pay for services.
Right.
You receive them and that's it. Now there's a next step up from that, and that's a staff member, a person who joins an organization,
Hmm.
and they join from 2.5 to 5 years. And at the end of 5 years, they can leave, although they're crushed into signing another contract. And this is a staff member who works at an organization. And when the public come in, they deliver that service to the public Scientologist. All
Gotcha.
right?
Okay. And these are like people who would be giving out e-meter readings and that kind of counseling, auditing.
Right. That's exactly right. Or supervising a course. All
Okay.
right. Then a step up from that would be the Sea organization, where you sign away your existence for 1 billion years and you dedicate yourself to clearing this sector of the universe. Now, you may laugh at this, but I'm going to tell you something. Over a period of time and being indoctrinated into this, you start to believe just about anything that would come out in a form of written or a lecture by L. Ron Hubbard. It is insidious, but it does happen. And people knowingly sign this contract, knowing that they're going to devote their future lives to doing this.
Right.
Now, what a SeaOrg person does is this: they operate in the higher echelon of organizations. You would get a mission, which would be the first thing It would be like we went to Frank Ogle's place down in Woodbury, New Jersey. That would be like a mission. It's kind of freewheeling, and Then the next thing up would be a class 4 organization
Hmm.
where you could go in and get delivered certain services. Once you get above that and go into the higher organizations, to get the higher level spiritual awareness gains, that would be run by SeaOrg members.
Okay.
And then above that would be what I was doing at the base in Hammett. And that is, it was the top of the organization. And that would be comparable to cardinals and the Pope. David would be comparable to the Pope, and
Right.
people who work there would be considered cardinals.
So this is
Just
gold base you're talking about, right?
about the gold base. But underneath that, you would have your regular Sea Org members who would run organizations to deliver the higher level processing or counseling. I hope I made that clear, but
Yeah,
I think that's the best way to describe it in terms of comparing it to what people know about.
absolutely.
Now,
So the
when you're
go ahead, please.
okay, when you're at that top organization, you are sequestered away from life.
Mhm.
Okay? As an example, when I worked there, and it didn't start this way in 1985 when I joined, but it gradually got to this point. It gradiently, that's a little bit at a time, just a little bit of freedom taken away, a little bit more. As an example, there was a guy who worked there, and Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman came there to get services. Now, this guy that worked there was on the phone telling his mother all the things that Tom and Nicole did. She was selling it to the National Enquirer. He got caught doing this. Now, listen, because of that, none of us could use the phone.
Yeah.
We had to go to reception, and they'd ask, "Why are you calling? Who is this person?" And then they'd listen in on it to make sure that you weren't lying. That was a little freedom taken away. And then your mail going out, because they didn't want you to have bad news sent to you. You had to sign off that they could open up the incoming mail
Mhm.
and check it out. And then on the reverse of that, anything that you wrote to send out would be checked before it went out, and it would go to the security force. And if there was something in there that was untoward or not quite right, you'd get it back and you had to rewrite it so it would be acceptable to go out. That's another little freedom taken away. All right.
So
Then they put a barbed wire fence around the place to, quote, keep people out. But the barbed wire was pointing out as well as it was pointing in. And you couldn't leave to go to a Walmart to get some basic things that you needed, like toothpaste or underwear and stuff like that. You had to go to the local canteen, which was located on the base. Or you could go on the internet, but there was a filter on it so that if there was anything involving Scientology or David Miscavige or the name Miscavige, it was cut off from you.
right,
You couldn't partake of that information.
right.
So now this is what it turned into, like a gulag, like literally we were trapped on that base.
So what I find so interesting about this, and it really is kind of and you had a great word for it too, the insidious nature of Scientology. And the more I learn about it, the more I start to understand it better. The more I feel like when you join SeaOrg, inevitably you're going to be victimized because
Yeah.
there is, and it's funny that they call people who are against Scientology suppressive people, because they literally are suppressing the people who are entrusted with maintaining this monolith of an organization. The people who are doing the most work are getting paid the least, have the least amount of freedoms, and are systematically having their freedoms eroded away and further indoctrinated further into this cult-like behavior until it feels like they can't even escape. So the thing, this has been bugging me for a while. So I have a picture up here of the hole. Now I can understand, like, this is obviously like a big facility, and say this is like maybe a type of intentional community, and there might need to be a place of I don't know if actually I'm sitting here thinking like maybe there needs to be a place to put somebody if they're behaving badly, but no, that's insane. It's absolutely insane. But this is a real physical place called the Hole,
Yeah.
and they could stick people who were in massive positions of power into the Hole, threaten to boot them out, and encourage them to effectively fight each other just to stay in and continue to be abused. This is so shocking to me, the mentality of being so indoctrinated into it that you can suffer abuse for so long that you will literally fight each other to stay in to continue to be abused. How how can this and I mean I read your book and I kind of understand, but it's still, for me, there seems to be something missing, and it's the psychology that would really allow a person to willingly put themselves through that abuse. And I was wondering if maybe you can shed some insight onto how this is achieved, and why these people are so trapped like this.
Well, and it's a great question, but that hole did exist. That's not in somebody's imagination.
Right.
And it was like originally that was set up for a place for the Commodore's Messenger org, which is like the top organization there,
Hmm.
to operate out of and run the organizations around the world. And it was a couple large, like trailers that were joined together. And when the hole was started, there was bars put on the windows. The doors were screwed shut, not just locked. There was screws that screwed them in. And there was one entrance to it, and there was a security guard at the entrance that would guard people from coming in, guard people from leaving. Now, you say, how do you get in a state of mind like that? I'm going to tell you how. On a very little by little gradient, one little step at a time. And for me to try to explain all the steps, it would take more time than we have. But
Right.
I can tell you, it starts with you agreeing to something that's small. As an example, you agree not to leave your coffee cup on the table,
Right.
that you should put it in the sink, okay? It would be that small of an agreement. And then you would agree that maybe you'd only have coffee once a day. A little bit of a freedom taken away where you'd like to have it 3 times a day. You follow me?
Right.
Little things like that. And then little agreements like the head of Scientology, no matter what, has to be protected because he's saving the planet. And that's COB, okay?
Right. That's
Chairman of the
David.
board,
Yeah.
David Miscavige. And then anything that you were to do that would be harmful to him in the least way is magnified by the fact that he has the toughest job on the planet. In other words, you're then becoming more and more subservient to the top of this organization
Hmm.
and more convinced that your worth is less and less and less. So you go into a state of mind where you feel you have to make up the damage and do anything not to harm what he's doing to save everybody on this planet. And by doing it a little bit at a time, it works. Because people in the hole, you're right. They had a thing called musical chairs one time where it ended people punching each other and knocking each other around to stay there. It's like what they call the Stockholm syndrome. Do you ever hear of that?
Yes. Oh, yes.
Okay, where you admire your enslavers, okay?
Right.
And that's the state of mind that you get in. And the people in the hole, I'm going to tell you, and I'm going to tell you, I've said this on many of my programs.
Hmm.
If you were to take an armored car or an armored bus, ram the gate, and go up to where the people in the hole were, or just in general, and say to everybody, listen, if you get on this vehicle, we will give you $10,000 in cash. We will provide job training for you so you can come out and have some exchangeable uh, skill that you can go into society and make money. Because a lot of these people have been in Scientology for 20, 30, and 40 years. and you're not going to come out and say, okay, I was a Scientologist. What the fuck are people going to say? Are you kidding me? Get out of here, you know? So they don't have a way to make money when they get out. So we'll give you 10,000 in cash. We'll give you a place to stay. We'll train you on a skill, and we'll let you stay until you get a job and make your own way, and then you're out on your own. And I'm going to tell you something. With the mindset of people who have been in hole, and even other people who just worked there for 20 and 30 and 40 years, Jeff, I don't know if you'd get one taker.
That's wild.
I don't know if you'd get one taker. And I say that with pity in my heart, because these people, their minds have been enslaved. Look,
Right.
I'll tell you how you can enslave somebody. You can take stainless steel handcuffs and put it on a person. Get stainless steel shackles and put it on their ankles so they can't run. They can just take short steps. Or you put barbed wire fences around where they stay to keep them in. Or you could change their mind so that now you have control of what they want to do and what they won't do.
Their entire core value system. Yeah.
That's exactly right. And that's how people are kept there. Their minds are changed to the point where they feel what they're doing is benefiting all of mankind. And if they were to violate this and leave, they would be abandoning a group that needs their help. Nothing could be further from the truth. Nothing could be further from the truth.
I was curious.
The hardest thing, and I'll finish this off with this. Sure. The hardest thing they're going to have to do is admit that they were wrong. And if you want to see mankind, then look at the common denominator of everybody. Everybody wants to be right at all costs.
Right.
But if you could look yourself in a mirror and say, you know what? I was fucking conned. That's your first step to freedom.
I mean, they can't be wrong, though. They would lose their imagined sense of divinity by having to admit that something was wrong. It's kind of one of the problems where you can't second guess the Pope. He's the Pope. He's supposed to be the Word of God. So that's how it's supposed to work. So I was curious about something. You lived on Gold Base for quite a long time.
26 and a half years.
You were on Gold Base for 26 and a half years?
That's all I did in the Sea organization. I worked in the music department. I worked as a musician and an arranger, and then I ran the music department for quite a while. And I'll be frank with you, one of the things that impelled me to get out is toward the end, they got a new musical director. And because I wrote what he called dated music, I couldn't get anything that I composed approved. I would go weeks and months on end without anything being approved. And at that point, I thought, what am I doing here? I even got together with David and said, David, you got to help me. I'll take a job waxing cars in the motor pool, anything so I can say I accomplished something. And he says, I'll look into it. He never did. And that was basically the beginning of the end for me.
Man, David, you should have fired that prick. Just saying.
Yeah, he should have. I'll tell you truthfully, I might still be there.
Well, I mean, I'm glad you're not.
In disguise. Come on.
That's true. I'm glad you're not. Well, the thing I was curious about, because I know that this is at I think the international, because Gold Base is not the international base.
It is.
Oh, it is. So did you have team share cards?
Absolutely.
Okay, because I don't think it's in your book. I'd love to hear about the team share cards.
Well, you're gonna have to jog my memory a little bit. There was 5 cards. I think one was a social card, one was a pay card, one was a chow card, one was a liberty card.
The last one was the birth card.
Birthing, yeah.
Yeah.
And what it was this. If your statistics were down 1 week, you would lose one of the cards. And it was set up in a gradient manner so that the first one wouldn't be that bad. The next one was a little worse, right up on the line until the last one, you're out of there. Or you wouldn't be out of there, but supposedly you'd be out of there. But that was done to, quote, make people work hard. So if the next week your stats are up, you'd get the card back.
Right.
All right?
Well, it's undeniable that that at this point, David's been extremely brutal with people. But I bring up the team share cards because That was made by L. Ron Hubbard. So I mean, there was already some elements of stern discipline in Scientology for a while. It seems that maybe even from the very inception of it.
There absolutely was. You're absolutely right. And I'm going to tell you something. David wasn't always the way he is now.
Mm.
He was a lovable little kid that I absolutely loved to be around. We had great times together. He had a great sense of humor. He was bright. He was tough. It what got to him is what Lord Acton, this British guy, lived from I think 1834 till early 1900s. Lord Acton, he's the one that said, "Power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely." It was the acquisition of power that, as far as I'm concerned, turned David from Dr. Hyde into who the hell was he? I don't know.
Dr. Jekyll and Mr.
Dr.
Hyde.
Jekyll into Mr. Hyde.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I'm telling you, he wasn't always that way. So, and I know it's not like I heard about this. I witnessed it. But when he changed, he changed. I mean, it got to the point I called him sir.
Sure.
When I lived at that base, I was not considered his father. I was considered another staff member. You're considered to be a spiritual being operating in a what they call a meat body. And no spiritual being is the father, the son, the mother, or the daughter of another one. Now, they will say they respect family for public relations, but that's complete and utter bullshit. And that's a technical word I've been meaning to use for a while. All right.
So what I'm just curious about it. What level did you attain?
You mean as far as spiritual awareness?
Mm-hmm.
OT5, Operating Thetan 5. Now, there would be Operating Thetan 6, and then Operating Thetan 7, and Operating Thetan 8. And there are people who have gone up to OT8 and then have left. And Leah's mother said, right on the aftermath, Leah asked her about it. She said, not worth it. On that level, supposedly, L. Ron Hubbard talks about Jesus being a pederast, a lover of young boys and men, and puts him down as this figure that, look, Christianity has been around for 2,000 years. There must be something right in it. I'm not saying it's completely right, but something has kept it going. And regardless
better PR.
Yeah, maybe better PR. But Jesus Christ, I mean, you know, you can say he wasn't the son of God. I don't have an opinion on it. I'm not trying to get into a religious thing. But a lot of the things he said made sense. You see what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So now to give this as the highest level and then tell you that at this point, because of everything you did up till then, you're now back to square zero. You're the person you're at the point of the person who walked into the organization the first time. This is at OT8. This is after you spend maybe $200,000 or $300,000. Now, what a kick in the
that's awful.
rear end that.
Just the idea that the concept that to achieve the highest level of spiritual awareness means you have to have you have to belong to a certain economic class is pretty fucked up. That's pretty fucked up. Well, okay, so what OT level is it that the Xenu stuff comes out?
OT3.
OT3. So you got to see the actual writings that L. Ron did?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
OT3, and then OT4 would be handling of body thetans, and there's drug cases. And OT5 is where now you start getting rid of body thetans.
Right, like purging the spirits of the aliens out of your body and that sort of thing.
Right. This is purging those alien spirits that became hooked to you because of the incident that happened on OT3.
Can I ask, like, okay, just candidly, did you ever believe the Xenu stuff?
Well, let's put it this way. That isn't presented to you right at the get-go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you have to been in it for a while.
And that's a lot of indoctrination.
Yeah.
Okay? And everything you think that is presented to you so far was true. So you read it, and you may have your doubts, or you may have no doubts, but you would say to yourself, well, I'll accept this. I'll see how this goes. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There was only one thing that really put a big doubt in my mind, and that is this. He said that these disembodied spirits were packed in ice and put in these DC-8 type of spaceships and flown from other planets to Earth. Now, this is on 75 planets. And the biggest problem they were handling was overpopulation. The average population of each planet was 150 billion. Now, that is a lot of people to try to get rid of, even if you want to get it down to 100 billion, even putting it in ice cubes. And me, of course, this is just me. I mean, as a young man, I worked in a research plant, and I got my good groundings in physics and things of life that count, like, you know, you don't stand in front of a 3,300 pound pressure reciprocal pump, because if it breaks loose, it's going to take your face off, you know.
It's true.
Me being of that state of mind, I start figuring out 75 planets, and they all come down in these DC-8. How many fucking of these planes would they have to bring them here?
I mean, love it.
It just didn't seem conceivable that it could be done.
I mean, aliens, yeah.
But
I mean,
listen,
maybe.
Listen,
but logistically,
where you're at that level, you're going to do it.
Sure.
Do it.
Absolutely. I mean, it's. I by no means think that it's. I don't think it's naive for people to believe it, especially because, like you said, it's a ladder. It's a stepping into these types of things. Yeah. You know, after so long into it and indoctrination, like anything seems possible. I'm just glad that nobody's getting given poison Kool-Aid. You know, at least there's that.
Like Jim Jones, right?
Yeah, like Jim Jones. So one other thing before I really want to get into the heavy topic, and that's disconnection. But before we get to that, do you mind talking about the Joe Rogan interview? Because
not at all.
Because we briefly mentioned it a little bit before we went live, but the talk was interesting because it gave some of your story and whatnot. But Joe acted very out of character, very, very out of character, especially nearing the end of that stream. And some people have been rumoring around a little bit that Scientology maybe did get to him or put pressure on him. Do you think that's possible?
Yeah. Not necessarily that they came up in person, but the threats they made. And maybe Joe was thinking, am I going to get sued for doing this? I better mitigate what I'm saying a little bit to, you know, be more in the middle than siding with Ron Miscavige. I'll tell you, though, be honest with you. I like Joe. I thought he was a pretty nice guy. At the end, I was shocked that as we're walking out, he says, no more goddamn Scientology interviews. And he did say that.
Yeah.
But I didn't get the point across that I wanted to get when I went on the program. And I'll tell you what that was. This was a big disappointment to me. When I escaped from the church, it was March 25th, 2012. About a year later, 2 private investigators were caught. One guy was trying to buy a house around the corner from my house. And Nick Pye, which is a West Dallas policeman, really great guy. A neighbor called and said, look, there's a guy case in the house. I don't know, maybe he's a drug dealer. Nick Pye went and confronted him and said, hey, listen, what are you doing here? And the guy started giving us some crap. So Nick says, look, you're under arrest. So he said, do you mind if I look in your car? And the guy said, no. So he went to his car, and in the trunk, he found 5 license plates from different states, 5 handguns, a stun gun, 2 rifles, 1 with the silencer, and over 2,000 rounds of ammunition. And at that point, he took him in for interrogation.
Right.
Now, found out they were getting paid $10,000 a week to follow me and give reports on my life from 8 o'clock in the morning till 8 o'clock at night. And if I was out later, continue on. The guy was brought before a court in eastern Wisconsin, a federal court, and he was brought up on these charges because you can't have a silencer on a rifle and ammo in the trunk of your car and trail somebody, and the cop stops you and say, oh, okay, that's okay, you can go. You know, it doesn't work that way.
It doesn't look like you're hunting.
A little bit of suspicion as to what you are aiming to do.
Oh, yeah.
So this guy goes before the court, but meanwhile, the church finds a high-priced attorney from Chicago who comes up and gets him a 5-year probationary period where everything that was downloaded from his, not his trunk, his computer,
Okay, yeah.
computer, the phone, everything was downloaded in that writ where he got the probation. Number 15 said, this will be kept by the West Dallas Police in a federal court until the end of 5 years, at which it can be returned to him. Okay? Shortly after that, 2013, and being caught, and this happening, the church hired an attorney from Madison, Wisconsin, a real shyster. And I say that because I have a friend who knew the guy, and he said, this guy is a real piece of work, you know. He went to a state court judge, didn't tell them that the guy was, the information that they're looking for was kept on a federal writ. And the state court judge gave the guy a writ to take to the West Dallas Police, saying that they had to give him all of the data. They should destroy any copies and withdraw any copies they sent out to media. And this was in an attempt for the church to say that this never happened. Now, they were ready to do it until Ricky Hankins, an alcohol, tobacco, and firearms guy, came in and says, hey, Nick, listen, we don't have to do this. We have this. And he showed him. It cut it off. That came due this month, and that now data has been released. But at that point, it hadn't been released yet. And I wanted to make this point that I have in writing the state courts, writ, the federal courts, and I wanted to show that in Joe Rogan. I never got a chance to do that. That was my only disappointment.
Man.
It was
that details out, like that's direct hard evidence corroborating the whole.
I got it right there. I got it right there. I can give people soft copies of it.
Right.
And shortly after that, they got an attorney to come on TMZ, and he said, this is guy representing the church. What he's saying is provable bullshit. Could you imagine another church saying what our former parishioner and staff member is saying is provable bullshit?
Yeah, that's not really behavior for a church.
This is high class. But they didn't have the destruction of the evidence, so that never came to fruition. But that's what I wanted to get across, and I couldn't do it on the show.
Was that not just? It's not just like what you were saying, or the things that you can find out looking through the public records. But now, this is actually fully released. This is hard data. That shows them stalking you. It shows that they were directly being like.
It would have the reports that they sent up every day. It would have those reports.
That's absolutely insane. That's insane.
Oh, and then if you want to hear about this, go to my website, therealronmiscavige.com, and go down and you can listen to the interrogation that Nick Pye and Ricky Hankins did with these two private investigators.
The audio is on there?
Absolutely. You can listen to it. And also what happened when I went to Janesville shopping, which is a town in Wisconsin about 40 miles southwest of me. I went food shopping, come out of the store. This is summertime, and I had a pocket T-shirt on. Went over to the car. I had my cell phone in my pocket T-shirt. Bent over to put the groceries in the car, and I thought the cell phone was going to fall out, so I put my hand over my left chest. Unbeknownst to me, they're in a van looking at me, and the father says to the son, it looks like the target, that's how referred to me, is having a heart attack. What should we do? So they called in. They spoke to a guy named Greg, and Greg says, I'll get somebody to you right away. Within minutes, another person come on the phone, identified himself as David Miscavige, and said, listen, if it's his time to die, let him die. Don't intervene. Don't do anything. That's on the interrogation, and you can hear the guy saying it.
It absolutely shatters my heart. Let me
tell you something. When Nick Pye told me this, because later on I got with him, and he said, we're going to get you a copy of that so you can hear the whole interrogation. He said, do you have any idea why they were following you? And I said, well, look, I'm the father of the chairman of the board. I'm what you call a high profile, and I think they might be afraid I'm going to go to the media or something.
Right.
And the other thing is maybe David's concerned about my health. And Nick said, look, Ron, I don't know how the hell I'm going to tell you this, but I'm just going to say it out loud. And he told me this story. And it changed me.
Right.
It changed me right then, because up till that point, I was not going to do anything. I wasn't going to go to the press. I wasn't going to write a book. And at
Well,
that point, I thought, you know what? I got to do something about this.
if I'm not
That
mistaken,
brought about this.
if I'm not mistaken, it wasn't even that really led you directly to make the book either. That's what led you to try and reconnect with your daughters. Is that right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I went down with the tape to play for them.
Mhm.
And within 40 miles of Clearwater, we had 3 private investigators following us. And I went to my
Jesus.
one daughter's door. She wasn't home. I went to the other one. I spoke to my daughter's husband, spoke to us for about 20 minutes, tap dancing. And I said, I want to speak to Denise. Well, you can't speak to her. You got to go to the church. I said, Jerry, it's a complete waste of fucking time to go to the church. You know that. So finally, at the end of 20 minutes, I says, Jerry, what does this mean? He says, well, Ron, Denise and I are through with you and Becky forever. And that put the nail in the coffin. All right.
Disconnected.
Yep. Disconnected. And that was it. So, but when Nick told me that, that was the beginning of the end, though, when
Yeah.
David said that. Because I knew at that point I meant nothing to him.
Right. But I mean, it's I think it speaks to your character too, that when you find this out and you find out how cold and callous that he could be towards you, your first impulse is to go and speak to your daughters. And I think that's absolutely worth pointing out. There's a long history of the church using underhanded tactics, exploiting people's weaknesses, holding over their heads auditing sessions where people have revealed sensitive things about themselves, to manipulate and to control people, using suppressive techniques to control what information they have access to. But I can't think of anything more vile than the practice of disconnection. It shatters my heart every time I hear a story about it.
Oh, and I'll tell you, I'm not the only one to have families disconnected from them. It's terrible. It's just, these people are low lives. You know that.
Mm. Oh yeah,
They're subhumans. They're not real human beings. To take away a person's family simply because you have differences of opinion is about as low as you can get. I can tell you right now. I love my children. I've had a great time with them. Hey, nobody's a perfect person. I wasn't a perfect father, but I enjoyed them, and we had a lot of great times together. And one thing I did teach them, and that was how to work. That was a skill. No matter what I was doing, any like government projects I had, they all had to help me do it. I mean, I built a recreation room on the back of the house, 15 by 27 feet, and I'm laying this Italian marble tile down, and Ronnie is there passing it to me, and David's handing him the tile, and Denise is doing something to help me. And little Lori, she's too young to help. She was really small. She went and made lemonade and would serve us the drink.
Yeah.
So it was stuff like that we enjoyed with each other. And my daughters were dancers, and we'd go down to Atlantic City, and they'd go on Tony Grant's Stars of the Future and dance down there and shit like that. I mean, just come on, they're fucking low lives. I will tell you, I got no respect for them, whatever.
Well, the last thing I'm kind of curious about, because I've been watching Leah Remini's series on A&E, and so I've heard what she has to say about it. Where do you think Shelley went?
Well, I know where Shelley went. I know. I don't know if she's still there. I got to say that, but
Okay.
she went to a little place up in Lake Arrowhead,
Hmm.
Big Bear. All right. And the reason she went there, and this is from a friend of mine who left and used to work in the communications division of RTC. He told me that Shelley was on the base and she was getting interrogation on whatever, I don't know. And her auditor, Teasy was her name, and Ann Rathbun, these are the 3 that were sent up there. What Shelley did was, I don't know how to, I don't want to get into a long, okay, let me put it this way. There's a board that's called an organizing board.
Hmm.
And there are job descriptions at the top of it that describe each job.
Okay.
Shelley took the manpower at the base and assigned a person to each job. And if you do that, that's called posting an org board. In other words, all the job descriptions have a person who's going to do it.
Okay.
Shelley did that because that has been a problem for years. So she went to LA, because that's where David was at the time, to tell him about this. And I think also to talk about their marriage.
Mm.
David looked at this as a blow, meaning a sudden departure. You leave an organization. And this is Scientology jargon, I'm telling you. And that is this: the only reason a person leaves a group is because he has committed harmful acts against them and he wants to remove himself so he doesn't keep on committing harmful acts.
Right.
Believe me, this is what it is.
The problem is never the church. It's they did something wrong.
Absolutely never. Never. They're infallible. Okay. So now David says she blew. He sends her to Lake Arrowhead facility to get reprogrammed, basically. And her auditor went with her. And Antoinette TZ and Ann Ratman went up there as a handler. So those three went there. I know that because my friend who worked in the communications office told me my birthday is on January 19th. Her birthday is on January 18th. I send her a gift. I get the answer the next day. An acknowledgement. Thank you. About 2005, I sent her a gift. I didn't get an answer for about 3 days. And it was very like, oh, thank you very much, Ron. I mean, something like a kid would write. I thought, okay, well, fine. My antenna went up, but I didn't do anything about it. So this guy who blew, who used to work in RTC, I called him and I said, look, whatever happened to Shelley? He says, I'll tell you what happened to her. And he told me that story. And he says, I know where she went because when you send a gift to her, we had these pigeonholes on there. And there was one for the facility at Lake Arrowhead. And that's where it would go. And that's how I know that she went there.
Wow. This is his own wife.
It's a terrible life. And Leah's, I'll tell you, she's a wonderful person. I got to tell you that, man. She's good looking. She has a great heart. But I'll tell you, she's from Brooklyn. And if she comes after you, she's going to stay after you until she gets an answer.
And she don't take no shit, man.
She doesn't take any shit from anybody.
Wow, that's wild. Well, I think we could probably call it here, but I mean, I think it'd be pretty amazing to get together at MythCon and be able to get a chance to talk a little bit more, since we're both going to be attending this year. And hey, maybe I can get you to sign my book too.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, awesome.
By the way, I charge money, and I'll tell you why. I play in several bands here, and I said, well, you know, this is a big joke, so take it as a humor. It's not serious. I said, look, you know, I have a celebrity surcharge. You know, I was on this and that and that. And the celebrity surcharge is this. For each gig, I get an extra $1.13. That's my charge. Cash only, no checks. So it's a big joke with him. And one girl who plays banjo in one of them gave me an extra $1.13.
That's awesome.
You know, being a celebrity is bullshit. What are you doing that's helping people? That's what I look at.
Yeah.
And I feel that I am helping people by exposing them, and hopefully nobody new will walk through the doors, you know?
Yeah, I mean, not only the sad part is because since there's so much control over people who are in, say, SeaOrg, there's so much control over what they can consume. It's hard to reach those people, but hopefully, you know, by showing by example how these things have affected people, how they've affected families, how it's affected your family, and the way in which they manipulate and control can hopefully prevent people from falling prey to it in the future. So it's an invaluable and important thing to be doing. So
I think it is, and I'll tell you, one of the things your viewers can do is go on to my website, therealronmiscavige.com, and look at some of the interviews I've done with people who have left and hear their full story. And the more people we have doing this, the more people will have in agreement with us. If we had like 1 million people who could hear this, that's a force to be reckoned with. Just having that many people on your side in their minds, in their thoughts. Do you follow me?
I do. Absolutely. So I just I went to go check real quick because I also wanted to make sure that I have your information put in the description properly. But I went to go check, and the stream is already demonetized. Do you think the church got to YouTube?
Do I what?
Do you think the church got to YouTube? That's a joke because YouTube demonetizes everything. So
Yeah, I know. Well, look, they watch it, and then I'll have like 50 or 90 likes and maybe 2 dislikes, and instantly within an hour, there's like 400 dislikes, and it's their
ooh,
trolls. It's like 5 people pressing a button so many times.
oh yeah, absolutely. Well, my guest and I thank you so much, Ron, for being here and talking with me. This has been amazing. Big thanks to Sean from Mythicist Milwaukee for hooking this up and for lending his studio. You can find more at therealronmiscavige.com. I also have your YouTube channel linked. And guys, you should check out Ruthless. This is an incredible book. And you can find it on Amazon. I put the link in there as well. But thank you so much. It's been my pleasure.
And Jeff, I'll tell you, I'm looking forward to meeting you in person at this event coming up in September. This is good.
Yeah.
And listen, thank you very much for having me on. I do appreciate it very much.
It's
Okay?
been my honor. All right. Take
Thank-
care, everybody. Have a good night.
Okay, bye-bye.